Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? Thank you so much for coming. You'll see that there's a mic stand to the left of you. I'll put a microphone on it in a moment, and please line up for questions. Thank you so much for coming, and here are the co-hosts of the morning meeting, Dan, Sean, and Mark.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Some of us just were across the way. Those of you who, penny wise and pound foolish, didn't buy the VIP tickets, missed an incredible reception. Each of us are going to tell one story of the many we heard from that to start. Then we'll run through the news, and then we'll talk, and then we'll take your questions. Thank you all for coming very much. We appreciate it. People came from far and wide. Sean's going to talk about that. One lady came up to me and said, "Last night I slept in your childhood bedroom." Kind of incredible.
Please raise your hand.
And the good news is that she said that the current owners, who we did not sell to directly, I haven't lived there since the 70s, I think. 70s, yeah. Maybe the 80s. I lived there in the 80s. She said the current owners are willing to let us have entree in. So, although I brought my son to the street to look at the house, I learned tonight my son can come see my childhood bedroom. So, super excited about that. Sean.
Well, no one stayed in my childhood. Nice thing about growing up in Rhode Island. No. So it was exciting. I'm going to go out on a limb. Initially, I met an individual who came from San Diego, and I thought right off the bat, there's the winner. Then I met a gentleman from Oregon who drove 2 hours to the airport, went through DFW. Can anyone beat that? Congratulations.
Dan, if you don't have a story that tops either of those, make one up.
I don't. It's not even close. The only thing that made me laugh was somebody said, "Oh my God, you really do smile in real life." And I said, "Yes, I do."
We are very grateful to you all for coming, and like the event we did in New York, this is a different kind of audience because it is a community. It's part of what Two Way is about, building authentic community around conversations of all types, like no other. And just the level of enthusiasm for what we're doing is extremely heartening. Those two of you who said, "I really hope Two Way makes it." Good news, bad news, encouraging, discouraging, but we're doing great. And we're doing great in large part because of folks like you who are so enthusiastic about what we're doing. So I'm going to run through the news a little bit. Again, we'll talk about it and then happy to take your questions. The mic is there, right there. So if you're super eager, and there's some people here who raise their hands online immediately every day, so I'm surprised they're not already over there. Feel free to line up anytime to answer questions. If you're interested in the Trump administration, your weekend has been dominated by the chaos over tariffs. It's kind of extraordinary, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and I'll explain why. The president is flying back this evening from Florida, so he'll be in D.C. Before this event ends or shortly thereafter. Secretary of State was in Panama talking to the government there, basically just a shorter Marco Rubio, nice little canal you have there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. Senator Graham and Senator Schmidt were very supportive of Tulsi Gabbard today. Senator Graham said he would vote to confirm her, but a lot of attention on Senator Young of Indiana, Senator Langford of Oklahoma as possible no votes. Senator Young got attacked by Elon Musk on Twitter pretty personally, and then a little bit later he said, "I just had a delightful conversation with Senator Young." And I read he deleted the original tweet. I don't know if he did or not, but something interesting going on there between those two. We'll talk about that. And then we could spend an hour talking about all the departments that Elon Musk is at war with, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So we'll start with tariffs. It is very confusing what's going on. I have been led to believe by my sources that tariffs are just a bluff, that the Colombia situation was the template, that this was not about revenue, this is not about a trade war or risking a trade war. It was about getting people to back down. And I still think that might be what happened, but the lack of explanation the lack of identification of who the strategist is here. In Trump 1.0, it was clear who the trade strategist was. Bob Lighthizer at USTR was running the trade strategy. It's not clear to me who is running it. So let's start there. Sean, besides the president, who's the quarterback of this trade gambit?
I think there's 4 starting players, 4 co-captains. Kevin Hassett, who's the director of the National Economic Council, Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff, Peter Navarro, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Those 4, and I think it's a range of who's fighting for what, but they're all on the same side of the field. There's a degree to which some are pushing more than others, but there's 4 key voices in that discussion.
And what happens if the markets tank tomorrow?
Well, you saw in the president's Oval Office comments on Friday, he expects some kind of short-term turmoil. He's laying the groundwork for that, saying, there might be some disruption early on. He's fully expecting it. And it's funny because I talk to a lot of folks in the financial services sector who say the market's already baked this in. I don't think so. I don't think that it's baked in. I think that there's going to be a huge churn in the next 48 hours, especially Tuesday morning.
But here's what I don't get. And stay with you, and then Dan, please weigh in. Trump is a day trader. He's not typically playing the long game. If you're not going to see concessions from Mexico and Canada, China is a whole different thing. The coming days are going to see some market disruption, going to see lots of complaints from CEOs, lots of supply chain questions, lots of news stories about the uncertainty. When's the first good news? Yeah, Trump did a good thing with these tariffs. It could be months away, if ever.
Well, so I think there's 3 pieces to this, and you just mentioned it, Canada, Mexico, and China. They're each going to react differently. I get the sense that the Canadians are much more engaged trying to get some kind of deal, something that Trump can claim credit for in terms of border security, reducing fentanyl coming in. The Mexicans don't seem to be as interested in playing ball, which I think is odd. And then the Chinese are a whole separate category. I actually think the funny part about this is, you remember a couple weeks ago we talked about this, I put a poll up on X on H-1B visas, and it was 67, 23, or 33 in favor of getting rid of H-1B visas, siding with Bannon versus Musk. I did the same thing on tariffs, just putting a thing out there about the Farm Bureau and some of the stuff. The comments, it's very similar. People are like, great, bring manufacturing home. We should grow it. We should build it here in America. I think President Trump has a lot more support from the base than people are giving him credit for. And I think that's where he's going to fight for this and try to claim some kind of victory, maybe one by one. So Canada might fall first, then Mexico, and then who knows what happens with China. But I think that Tuesday, they're going into effect. There'll be some churn, and then slowly things will peel off.
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's Colombia, everyone says, is the template. But Colombia there was an airplane going with immigrants being returned that they did not allow to land. So the smack back, the Hulk Hogan, is the plane needs to land. You need to take them back. Here, we want them to stop fentanyl and immigration. I'm not sure with Canada what the immigration ask is per se. And I think, Mark, to your point, Trump is very sensitive to the perception or to the reality of economic pain. So the base is with them when it seems like it's theoretical. That, we're going to win this. Trump's a winner. But if all of a sudden prices start going up for run-of-the-mill common goods, companies start saying, what's next with China? Then there's real economic potential consequences.
So Tuesday this goes into effect. Tuesday night, you're not going to pay more for eggs. I mean, it's right.
Well,
so he's buying himself a week.
Because I said this the other day. Trump's going to declare victory. I mean, I don't care what it is. He's going to declare victory. He has not defined victory, which is clever, right? So whatever it is, he'll say, I got a pound of flesh, I declare victory.
And that's why the Canadians are going to be the first ones to fold, because they're going to say, we're throwing $1 billion at additional border security measures to stem the flow of fentanyl into your country.
And I think that's the challenge. And Mark, you put this in your newsletter today. You can only make this threat so many times before you have to back it up. And you're like, I'm truly going to go to war with you economically to get this before countries just say it's a knee-jerk.
But that's why he has to go through with this. If this happens on Tuesday and he backs off, every other country, all the Europeans, when he talks about market access for autos, are going to say, oh, Okay, so he's going to back down. He has to go forward with
Well,
this.
and I think it was the president of Mexico, I don't know if it was directly or indirectly, said, we don't think he really has the stomach to go through with this. So Mexico, Canada seems nervous. Canada seems like we don't want to do this. There's a lot of pain. But Mexico seems more like, let me see what your stomach is for this. That's tough for him because he's always about strength and winning. Always.
So one great thing about the program is whenever we're on, I get lots of texts and emails from people weighing in on substance and other things about the event, and we're live streaming now. So I just want to read you 3 messages that I got here.
One's for me. Mark, get me a drink.
One says, you all are underestimating the extent to which the markets have not priced this in to the stock. 2 is, your shoes are perfect, because I'm wearing my Chucks.
Nice.
People like that. And 3 is, your shirt is bunching up. So I've addressed all 3
What about
of those. Those are actual messages. Okay, let's talk about Panama. You know, we're doing a thing tomorrow, special at 2 o'clock Eastern time on Greenland. But this Panama thing seems also very serious. Marco Rubio went there. Dan, start with you. Is this something that is good for America, something that's going to happen? What's your sense of that?
It would be great if America owned the Panama Canal and America could control it and
Call it
tax
the America Canal.
Yes, exactly. Call it the American Canal. I'd love to be 6'4" and play for the Knicks. Like, there's a lot of things that you would love to have. I just don't see how the government of Panama is going to be like, okay, take our crown jewel and our biggest economic engine because you asked for it. And are we really going to invade Panama, shut down the Panama Canal? Every time we have dock worker strikes, our GDP takes a hit when it's like a 2 or 3 day strike. We're going to shut down the biggest transport. I mean, all of this goes to this idea of chaos, of unpredictability. Like, it worked with Colombia, and as an American, I hope it is successful. But you start playing with fire when you're constantly throwing out the bombs where the end game seems blurry.
So what makes this time different, if this was Trump 1.0, Rex Tillerson would be walking down to Panama, and I'm not being disrespectful to Rex, but saying, okay, guys, I'm working with the president, we're going to get this, da-da-da-da, but whatever. Marco Rubio is out there selling it and saying, this is why we need it, this is the economic impact, this is the national security impact of having 2 large Hong Kong aspects of it on both ends of the port. He's got a team that's willing to back him up right now. That's not what he had in Trump 1.0.
But what does that mean, though? Like,
well, you had somebody, what it meant was that they'd walk into the office and say, okay, Mr. President, and then they'd walk out of the office and say, all right, how do we slow this down?
but I mean, so then it is like, is Marco saying, like, we're really taking this? Like,
No, but I think it's whether it's us taking it or having a better sense of control or getting the Chinese out. When you hear President Trump talk about it, the biggest issue that he has is whether or not China has too much control and whether that would impact being able to shut us off at a time that we needed to get through there. So the bottom line is whether we own it or whether the Chinese are out, the bottom line is we need the Chinese influence out of both ends of it.
As an American, I hope he's successful. But I think you're playing with fire.
Is our Tulsi Gabbard correspondent here? Is she here? Megan? Is Megan here? I'm asking. No one knows. No one knows. All right. Megan might be here. So let's talk about where it stands. There's clearly is a problem with Senator Young, and there's clearly a problem with Senator Langford. I don't know about Collins and McConnell and Murkowski, and I'm no math genius, but that's 5. Now, I had been led to believe strongly by all my sources that there'd be no Democratic votes for Kennedy or Gabbard. I now think there might be. So then the math becomes a lot trickier, right? Then you start sliding pegs back in both directions.
For both of them, you think there may be
potentially,
okay.
they both might get Democratic votes, I'm told.
Okay.
So, Sean, where's Gabbard stand now in terms of confirmation?
I think she's got actually, you talk about sliding pegs, Collins' comments about her were encouraging. So you put Collins in her column.
Maybe. Some people read the Collins comments as, get off my back, I'm voting no so I can be nice to her.
Maybe. But I mean, my point is that she's more in play.
Not necessarily.
No. As opposed to being a straight up no.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, and there's an assumption that Murkowski's definitely a no, and there's an assumption that McConnell's definitely a no. I do think, as we talked about on Friday with Megan on the show, Tulsi's got some making up to do with Young in particular, and it may be more than that. I mean, I still think there's a couple other ones that might not be as knowing. Again, she's got to get out of committee. Because before we even talk about a floor vote, if she loses one Republican on the Intel committee, it's over.
Unless she gets a Democrat.
Correct. Well, you want to name a name?
I left my phone back there. I'd be going through the roster right now.
Let's go down the list.
Who could this be?
So I think that she, among them, the same thing with RFK's chances are higher because no one came out. But we talked about this again earlier. When Cassidy said, I've got a lot of thinking to do this weekend, that's not a good sign, right? I mean, that's the kid that gets sent out of the classroom, like, I'll be thinking about this over the weekend, and you're nervous as hell coming back in, thinking, what's my punishment going to be? But neither one of them has been public the way Pete Hegseth was, going out there and trying to make it clear that, I need the MAGA team on board.
So no Republican is a public no against either of them, right? The votes are, in theory, tomorrow, Tuesday, or Wednesday, as I understand it.
The Kennedy one is Tuesday.
So if you're the comms director for a senator who wants to vote no, do you say in advance?
I would. I think this is one where everyone, for the most part,
no one wants to go first.
They don't want to go first.
That's where I think you lock arms, and I think you try to see, is it 5 or 6? Because if it's 4, then if you say Murkowski, Collins, and McConnell, kind of like they are who they are, the 4th is the lone sheep or the wolf, whatever. So if you can try to get 5 or 6, then there's a little bit of safety. I think 2 things. One, MAGA has not, other than the Musk-Young spat, MAGA has not turned the guns publicly on anyone.
Including the president.
Which makes me wonder if behind the scenes they feel like there is some progress being made. 2, if you were going to lose the vote and you knew it, would you not resign or withdraw this weekend? Because now you're going.
No.
Okay.
Neither of them thinks they're dead.
Okay. Well, so now what you risk is, if you're the president and Republicans, is you had a little bit of a rough week last week. You're going to start potentially the next week with the nominee going down. So, to me, if you're the Republican, you got to be all in now. Like turn the hounds loose, whatever you're doing.
Well, there's also the difference before is that Hegseth was out there by himself, right?
Yep.
He was right now, you're trying to figure out which base to cover. You got. And frankly, I think Cash is probably the safest of the 3.
Which is amazing.
but he's not. I mean, like.
Which is amazing. It's amazing, but it's true. You're right.
But I mean,
you're right.
He's played the game. I mean, look, he played the game great. He got he understood the math. I got these guys. This is all I need to get to 50, and I'm in.
Well, and the base feels like that job of all the jobs that the base will go to war. Like you might as well just retire that day and walk out of the Senate because they will make you pay.
So the White House says the president's all in for his nominees, but
Well, what are they going to say?
well, no, but I mean, where is it?
What else was David Plouffe going to say that weekend? Of course we're going to win.
He's all in until they tell him, like,
Has he called senators?
My understanding is that he was at least supposed to be. I don't know whether he executed on it.
Okay.
Check the golf course at Mar-a-Lago.
I'm of 2 minds about the coverage of Elon Musk. Some days I think it's way too much, and today I think it's not nearly enough because his influence is vast right now, right? He's out there, I don't know, probably not with permission, really personally attacking Senator Young, right? He's out there taking over the access to the Treasury payment system. He's out there sending flaming emails to departments demanding all sorts of things. And Sean.
Checking my sources.
I know, that's why I'm pausing. Sean, is anyone in charge of him? Is anyone, Susie Wiles, the president? Does anyone say, hey, richest man in the world, you're not the president or prime minister?
Not that he's going to last.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the second you do that, but he has yet to cross Trump, and that's the difference. And I don't know how much contact he's having with them. So is he saying, hey, this guy's screwing you, I'm going to come to your defense? Frankly, as far as the systems go, as a taxpayer, I'm glad. Get in there, kick the tires, find out what we're wasting money on, where there's inefficiencies, bring some private sector. There's one woman that I spoke to earlier, I don't know where she was talking to me about HHS and the the database that they implemented there. They saved $360 million in the first year just through inefficiencies, exposing contracts. I'm excited. Get in there, put your fingers in, find out where we're spending money, where we're wasting money, where there's inefficiencies. That's what people are getting excited about. I mean, great. I hope there's more of it.
I think the challenge is he does not know government. He doesn't know Washington well. To your point, and we've talked about this on the show, if I were a Democrat, I would not defend the status quo. I would not say all is well with government, it works great. So in that regard, any effect or effort to make it more efficient and do less with more is good. When Musk starts kind of popping off in public, so when they were having the spat with TikTok, Musk goes out and makes the comment, if they would just let X be more available in China, is that in the US interest or Musk's interest? When Musk starts poking around and just like putting out these ideas, like apparently he did with X, everybody, you have, we'll buy you all out. You can all resign, and if not, I'll just blow you all out. That's where he could start causing headaches, I think, for the president. Because when you turn a company over, so if a new CEO comes in and you say, I want my own team, you do not go out and say to the CFO, the marketing officer, the head of HR, and the general counsel, you're all fired today. You say, I'm going to get rid of the CFO, the deputy's going to take over, we're going to do a search, and then in 6 months, I'm going to get rid of this person. And then 6 months later, this person. Why do you do that? You want continuity, you want institutional knowledge, you want the ship to keep moving while you're changing pieces out. Musk seems to be of the opinion of the Silicon Valley mantra, move fast and break shit, right? And if you kind of like lie and whatever, just bulldoze through, right? And if you kind of break the law, and I say this admirably about Silicon Valley, they're a crown jewel of America, and Uber is a great example. Uber went into cities, the taxi commissions, they totally broke the law. They built a following and they said, try to stop us, we're popular. And it worked. It's kind of how the Valley operates. Government is not the Valley. Maybe it should be, you can argue, but I think Musk is going to get close to the line where he causes headaches. And the first time Trump has to answer for Musk is when you start asking, have you, extended your stay?
Right. But so far that hasn't happened. And I think for the most part,
Ish.
what he's doing, no one thinks government, I don't know of a government agency that works well. None.
And that's the challenge for Democrats.
And so
you
as
don't
long
want
as
to own
it's perceived that he's going in
the
there,
bureaucracy. Yep.
fighting inefficiencies, looking for ways that we can be operating better, I think that he's got the support. To your point,
Yes.
yeah, if he oversteps,
Yep.
then I think it's going to be a problem because the president doesn't want the headache.
Yep.
And I think the other issue is that Musk has got to be careful that he doesn't get perceived as being in charge.
Yeah.
And that's the other charge that he's got to be careful of, because as soon as that comes, Trump is not a big fan of.
It reminds me of Rudy Giuliani when I think it was Bill Bratton was on the cover of Newsweek as the police commissioner of New York. Bill Bratton is bringing down crime. And that was the wrong answer. Rudy Giuliani, as mayor, was bringing down crime, and he worked for Mayor Giuliani. If that starts happening, that Musk is fixing government, I wonder if Trump's like, yeah, that's cool.
All right, we're going to do one more topic, and then we're going to take your questions. The mic's over there. I'm not the fire marshal, but I don't want to see a super long line there, but I would like a couple folks. So if you've got a question, you're ready to get in line, please head over to the mic. DNC chair elected yesterday, Ken Martin.
Can we just give a huge congratulations to the Democratic National Committee for electing a white dude from Minnesota. Diversity is alive. And David Hogg, congratulations on becoming vice chair. I could not be prouder of the two of you.
There's no more DEI in the party. We're moving on.
If Ken Martin were here in the room, would any of you know? Ladies and gentlemen, no. Dan,
Yeah.
Sean's mocked the lack of diversity, but I'm a little surprised that Wickler did so poorly. He had the backing of a lot of the senior people in the party. Did that hurt him, or is this purely just an inside game, a vote, and Martin just has closer ties to the party apparatus?
I think it was the latter. I mean, we said this when he first announced. He said, I think I have like 175 of the DNC members, like the day he announced for this. It is an inside baseball game. And I think you heard this at the convention and reported in the newspapers. The party is still struggling with like why we lost and where do we go from here. And I think that's reflected in nobody was able to step forward. Apparently Kamala Harris kind of made some calls and was like, I look forward to working with you, which is interesting. She leaked it, that she was involved, so that tells you a little bit about where her head is. But I think there aren't any powerful leaders in the party right now. The party doesn't know where it wants to go, so it went with the comfortable shoe that it knows. He clearly can kind of do the bread and butter of, he says, I'm going to help with raising money, and all the leaders of the party have come out, Obama, the Clintons, Joe Biden, and said, we're going to help raise money, we're going to help them. So, look, the party is not in great shape, but I don't read a lot into this. He was the favorite to some extent amongst the insiders on the first day, and it's not a surprise that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi couldn't pull him over.
John, if he's a huge success, what would that look like? Give a serious answer.
I mean, if he can put out some kind of architecture that gets the members on board, meaning the leaders, the Schumers, Hakeem Jeffries.
Like a messaging architecture?
Yeah, like saying, these are the 5 things we need to concentrate on, and he's not getting shot down. I think that's a success. There needs to be some effort to say, there's a ton of stuff that we can and should do, but here are the 5 things that we need to do. We got to rebuild some infrastructure things. We need to fund our state parties. We need to blah, blah. I mean, but here's my 5 things. And if he can get the leaders, the perceived leaders, and the donors behind that effort publicly, that's a win.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, I don't know if he's here, Terry McAuliffe, tonight, but I worked for Terry in the end of 2002, 3, and 4, when Bush was in and Republicans had it. And Terry went out and raised money, and people were like screaming, what's our message? How are we going to defeat Bush? And Terry was like, that's not my job. We have 9 candidates, Howard Dean, Dick Gephardt, John Kerry. I'm going to, behind the scenes, he went around the country and said to donors, I need you to agree that whoever we nominate, you're going to help. Keep writing to the party. We're going to make...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, state investments. I'll go on TV. But folks, it's not my job to get the message. The candidate that goes out and gets the primary votes around the country, that's our message.
Here's what I'm doing this in the form of a question, even though my question has a point of view. And I got nothing against the guy. Can that guy go to Manhattan and Beverly Hills and Chicago and raise money from donors? Are they going to look at that guy? He just doesn't seem like that kind of guy, nor does I think he's going to be inspirational for grassroots. And I know that all the big names in the parties will help, but doesn't the chair have a big responsibility for raising big checks from big people who may not find a guy in Minnesota nice? They say a confident Minnesotan is someone who looks at your shoes as opposed to his own when he talks to you.
Right. I think the party doesn't really know. I mean, I think the number one thing they're going to say in Manhattan is they're going to complain right now. They're going to complain.
I'm sorry, just focus on just the, like the interpersonal thing. Like if you were his finance chair or finance advisor, would you be super excited to send that guy onto Fifth Avenue?
Look, I don't know. I've never met him in person, so I don't know if he can schmooze with the best of them and can look you in the eye and talk. And that sounds simple, but to Mark's point, it's not. There are a lot of people who get very nervous, and they look down and they can't look you in the eye, and some of them are afraid to make an ask. I don't know. I think if the Obamas and the Clintons and everyone else say, hey, look, folks, we're going to be okay. We're going to rebuild. You and I were texting about this the other day. By this summer, we're going to get a sense. Are candidate recruitment, is it going well? Do people say, I think 26 is going to be my time to run? If Roy Cooper says, I'm going to run for the Senate in the next 2 months, donors will say, okay. If Pete Buttigieg says, I'm going to run in Michigan, then you start getting this sense of like, we're getting A-list candidates. Yeah, exactly. We can argue there'll be a primary, but if you start getting, now, conversely, if they start passing, Mark, to your point, and the Obamas and others are like lukewarm, do I think he will organically have the force to do it? Probably not.
So can I just, like, a bit of perspective. In 2012, I walked into the RNC. Reince Priebus had just been elected chairman, a Wisconsin state party chair. We're $25+ million in debt. I literally, my favorite story is I got the job when I was interviewing. I'd put together this like 10-page plan. Here's what I want to do to reform. Jeff Larson, the chief of staff, Reince, were like, this is impressive. This is great. We hired him. Hire me. I come in and I'm getting ready to execute. And I sit down and I talk. They're like, oh yeah, but we don't have any money. Like, we love that plan, but we don't have any money. I mean, we literally cut newspaper subscriptions. We were slashing and cutting. Same scenario. Reince Priebus from Kenosha, Wisconsin, had to go up to Manhattan, California, Texas, Florida, and make the case. And he put together a plan and said, these are the investments that we need to make mechanically to allow our candidates to win. The same thing that Dan was saying. This is no different. I mean, we were literally, the difference they have is they weren't climbing out of a $25 million hole and saying, hey, by the way, can you max out to us so that we can pay off the debt?
Well, and by the way, just to like give some encouragement to Democrats, at that time, Republicans were like, you know what, in 2016 we're looking great. We have Jeb Bush and Paul Ryan, and like nobody was like,
well, that was
and
16,
Donald Trump, right? No, but as people got ready for 2016, and they were like, who was going to take us out of the wilderness? I can remember the Clinton campaign. I wasn't on it. I worked for her prior. We're like, Jeb is we're worried. We're very worried about Jeb. Look at the soft money he's. If we could get Donald Trump, like people were measuring the drapes. So like, it's okay. We don't know who the candidates will be. It looks dark before, you know.
But the difference is
later.
that in 12, we literally, Reince put together a plan and said, these are the 5 things that matter. I mean, this is what you're asking, fundamentally. Can this guy come out and say, guys, here's what I'm in charge of. These are the mechanics, technology, state party funding, boom, boom, boom. This is what I need to do, right? This is what I need to do. I mean, it's almost like I'm the coach. I need to go get a team now. So let me put together the stuff so that we can do all this. If he can do that, that's success. Success is getting a candidate to feel confident that the party can mechanically support them with voter lists, with voter ID, with grassroots efforts and things like that.
And one last thing I'll say is because the world is changing. The other question is the outside interest groups. Democrats have about $1.5 billion or so of donors, institutional donors, that they'll give their, I can't believe I'm going to say this, just a little $1 million check to the DNC, but where do I put my $50 million? Right, my $100 million. That group met this weekend in Palm Beach, and some people we know were down there. If that group sticks together and says we're still going to, we'll do $2 billion next time, then the infrastructure, along with what Sean said, the kind of hard money and the soft money, if that continues to go, we need issues, we need a candidate, but that infrastructure should continue to build.
My conclusion of that segment of the conversation is that Ken Martin makes Reince Priebus look like Timothy Chalamet. Question.
Yes, thank you.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what's on your mind, please.
Sure. My name is Gerald Levin. I'm from the suburb of Philadelphia, PA. I suspect a lot of people here from Washington, D.C. hate my guts because of that, but that's another.
No, as long as they're playing the Chiefs, I'm an Eagles fan.
Anyway, first I want to thank you for all 3 of you for producing Two-Way. I'm quite frankly awed by the quality of the political analysis that you make available to the average American. What else can I say?
Thank you for that.
Okay. Yeah. On the other hand,
I'll notice no one stood and applauded just now, because I did polite. But go ahead.
I understand. Anyway, my question is this. Do there exist thresholds, one for the Republicans, one for the Democrats, such that if the Republicans cross that threshold to the right, and if the Democrats cross their threshold to the left, moderate Republican and Democratic members of the House and Senate governors, whatever, will jump ship and form a moderate party? If yes, what threshold? If not, why not?
Excellent. Gentlemen?
No.
Why not?
The party is a blob, and it will move to wherever, so if suddenly, which it won't happen, if suddenly there became a moderate streak, the party goes on both sides like this, and it always engulfs, it'll go as far as it can. There's very few moderates left in either party, and the ones that are there recognize where the base is. So I don't think there's ever be a successful effort, at least in my lifetime.
I mean, Michael Bloomberg came pretty close. He had his money. He studied for years how, on the presidential level, how do you get to 270 electoral votes? That was what he had a really hard time squaring as an independent. He thought he could win some states, but it would go to the House, and whoever controlled the House would likely put their candidate in. So, third way on the Democratic side, toyed around with this. To Sean's point, there's so much infrastructure and so much advantage to the 2 parties. Never say never, but it's hard to, it's more likely somebody hijacks an existing party.
That happened. Happened.
That exactly.
Has that ever happened?
When?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's not going to be on an issue. It's going to be on a personality. It's going to be somebody with the wealth of Michael Bloomberg, the record of public service of Colin Powell, and whatever the opposite of the sanity of Ross Perot is, who runs in a cycle when the 2 major party candidates are flawed. The analog is Jesse Ventura getting elected governor of Minnesota, right? That wasn't meant to be funny. There were weak major party nominees, and he was the right person at the right time. So I really do think finding the difference between the parties is tough, because although the parties contain multitudes, because we have a weird system we don't have a parliamentary system, there's not much room between the two parties, even now, even as far as the Democrats have moved to the left, and even in the age of MAGA. It's just hard to come up with an issue set that's actually between them. So again, I don't think it'll be an issue. I think it'll be personality.
Dan mentioned this, but the infrastructure that parties bring to the table, not only the voter list and all that, but their ability to keep everyone else off of the playing field, right? So it's, when someone starts up an effort, the two parties have it in their interest, generally speaking, to keep them out. And then they'll put limits on it. They'll say, okay, if you don't get 5% this year.
We saw that with Bobby Kennedy.
Right, you'll get taken off. So it's just not, you're not just fighting to get yourself elevated, but they're pushing you down at the same time.
Yep. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Take your time.
Unfortunately, I will.
Well, and as you you thanked all of us. Just a quick shout out to all the people who produced the morning meeting and are producing this. Just a huge shout out.
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Tell folks who don't know who you are, what's on your mind, sir.
Hi, this is Professor Kenny from Brooklyn. My beautiful wife, Jacqueline, and I drove down from Brooklyn. She's a Democrat. I'm a Republican. And
Bagels and babka in the back for everyone.
Yes. And I would just like to thank Mark and Sean and Dan for this platform, because it's a unifying platform. From just talking to everyone here, we have different opinions about things, but we're all Americans. We all bleed red, right? So let's try and work together. And thank you. So my question is not very profound. It's simple. It's more towards Sean, I think, than anybody. Sean, if Tulsi and RFK don't get in, who's next?
Well, I will say this, to Megan's point on Friday, I think there's going to be a lot of pissed off people and a lot of pissed off women that really came into this movement because RFK and Tulsi represented a voice that wasn't getting heard. So I think, first of all, that's going to be a problem. On the DNI one, I would immediately go to a Rick Grinnell. He was acting last time.
Yeah.
Obviously got amazing credentials, having a great week for the country. I think that's where I would head, and I don't know that Rick would do it, but I would go there. On HHS,
Say Dr. Oz.
I was going to say, you've got a bunch of these guys that are into the mix. You have to put someone MAGA in there. MAGA, right? There's a difference. And what these guys have done, I've said it before, to expose what's happening in government, the conflicts of interest, the issues that ultra-processed foods and forever plastics, dyes have been causing, just all this stuff. It's not just a person. You'd have to find someone who's been championing that. And there's a lot of people in that movement. Paul Saladino, some others that are online that have been championing this. So I was at a MAHA rally Friday. They have this. There's a lot of power behind this movement. So it would have to be somebody that movement said they're going to follow through.
And they'll be confirmable, you believe?
Yeah, there's a difference. The one sticking issue, if Bobby Kennedy didn't have, the prevailing issue is vaccines. Right. So find somebody else that isn't as outspoken on vaccines but is on board on the agenda. I think they probably can pick up some Democrats.
The obvious answer, powered by two-way, would be Dr. John.
Yeah. Thank
Our
you,
own
guys.
Dr. John. Thank you, John. Thank you, Professor. Next.
Hey guys, thanks for being here. My name is Peter. I live in Washington, but I'm originally from the great state of Michigan. And if I may, I think Pete Buttigieg, as an adoptive Michigander, might face a little bit of opposition in the primary, just for that purpose. My question is about, Trump seems quite enamored with the whole special envoy. He's Keith Kellogg, Rick Grinnell, Steve Witkoff in Israel and Iran. I'm just curious, how do you see, Marco Rubio as an obvious presidential contender to be? How does he view and how does Trump understand this division of responsibilities on international affairs? Like, obviously there's a lot of existent problems in the world, a lot of areas to be dealt with, but some of the things that might traditionally be dealt with by a Secretary of State seem to be done by these special envoys. Like, how does Trump feel about this? How does he use these people? Obviously he has a great deal of respect and trust with Steve Witkoff, but I'm just curious if you could weigh in on his use of these non-Senate confirmed positions.
So actually, let me back up for a second, because they changed the rule on special envoys. So they can go 6 months without being Senate confirmed. The president can waive that once, and this is a new rule post-Trump 1. And then so the really interesting question is what happens after 12 months? Do these people stick around? Do they want to go through the confirmation process, submit all those forms, all sorts of stuff? And there's also an element of distinction. I can't say that I know exactly what Rick's employment status is or even Witkoff's. But in the case of Keith Kellogg, he's an assistant to the president. He is a White House employee who also holds the title, meaning so there's disclosure requirements and et cetera. And I don't know that General Kellogg, that Rick or those guys. And so part of this is going to be interesting. How long do they stick around? Or do they get appointed to something else, et cetera? The one thing about that question that's so interesting to a guy like me is when I took the job as press secretary, traditionally, you handle the president's media requests, there's a traditional set of duties. And I learned real quick that didn't matter. Like Hope Hicks handled all of his media requests. And it's the same thing. If you're Marco Rubio and you saw 1.0, you know that he's going to utilize these people in different ways. And Trump doesn't really care what your title is. He's going to be like, hey, John, go get those hostages back because you're in my office right now. Or go do this. Settle, peace in the Middle East.
That is not the least bit exaggerated, by the way. I know you laughed at
Steve
Sean's...
Witkoff is a real estate developer and his golf buddy.
And he's done pretty well.
And he's Jewish.
And Steve Witkoff has done an amazing job so far on behalf of this country.
Yep.
So I think as long as the job's getting done, Trump's happy. I mean, Grinnell, huge victory, bringing back those hostages this weekend, and potentially negotiating some other, I don't know if the right word is repatriation of people in this country illegally. But so as long as they're racking up wins, he's happy. And if Marco Rubio, look, the Secretary of State has got plenty to do, right? Whether it's Panama, whatever. As long as you have the mindset, and I think Marco Rubio is a really smart guy politically as well as academically, he understands that, okay, I'll let Rick do Rick stuff, I'll let Steve Witkoff do Steve Witkoff stuff, and I'll let General Kellogg handle Ukraine. Great, I got about 1 million other things to do and run an agency or department. So as long as everybody gets it, it'll be great. And I think Marco also understands, again, considering he's run for president before, he's been senator, he was Speaker of the House in Florida, he's going to play the game, and the chips will fall where they may. And if there's an opening, there's an opening.
I'll say 2 more things. I agree with everything Sean said. One is that there's also the National Security Advisor, right? There's already a question of who does what at a very high level. The other thing is Rubio has young kids, okay? These envoy jobs require a lot of time on the ground, going back to the same places over and over, talking to the same people over and over. I think he's happy to say, you know what? That's fewer air miles for me, more time I can be with my kids. Not that he won't be traveling a lot, as evidenced by the fact that he's already started, but I think for him, this is fine. And as Sean said, he's a super savvy guy. He's not been in the executive branch in Washington, but he understands, he gets the joke, and he'll figure it out. And I doubt that it'll cause tension. I think it'll be welcome, as long as the people are doing a good job. Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Howdy. My name is Chris Ring. I'm a third-generation Washington Redskin fan from Alexandria, Virginia. Yeah, how about Jaden Daniels? My condolences.
Jurgensen or Kilmer?
Sonny. Of course, Sonny.
Correct answer.
Yes, no, my dad has a Sonny jersey, and he wears it regularly. So my condolences, Dan, about the Giants, because the Giants are just a mess.
Yeah, I know.
And,
Jaden Daniels is killing me.
Honestly, why doesn't? The Mara family is just running amok. Getting rid of Tom Coughlin instead of Jerry Reese back in the day. That was just a disaster. There's still a mess.
Yes.
Thank goodness we have the Jets also.
Oh God. Yeah, no, I actually know someone who's a Giants-Mets fan who said if the Giants and the Jets ever played in the Super Bowl, there'd be bodies piled up in the street. But anyways, no. And by the way, Sean, Jamie and Stephen Dawson say hello, your neighbors. I'm from Alexandria,
They want to sleep in my childhood bedroom.
No, I will not sleep in your childhood bedroom.
No, yeah.
Okay, so big picture question outside of sports. Although more sports questions would be welcome because it's a diversion. Because I think a lot of us, need diversions from the daily the daily wine. But according to existing law, the debt to GDP ratio by 2050 will be 160% of our. It's going to be 160% of our existing GDP, and it's being driven by healthcare and Social Security by spending and items that fund those two programs. Elon Musk is going to have a very difficult time finding ways to shrink the size of the government and also to reduce our debt unless he involves Social Security and healthcare spending.
And the Defense Department. That's one of the three, yeah.
Quite frankly, I think we're spending too little on defense right now, especially since I consider that with the next 10 years, I think China's going to make a move on Taiwan, and we're probably going to go to World War III.
Is your question, where are they going to get an abacus that deals with this? Is that the question?
My question is that if Musk goes to Trump and says and tells him you have to make major changes on both on healthcare and Social Security, and taxes are going to have to be raised, but we can keep the existing tax law, but we're going to have to pull back more deductions in order to pay for more defense spending. What's Trump's reaction going to be, and how should
Goodbye.
Get out of my office. We got the question.
But there's just no way you can actually address the debt unless you talk about Social Security and healthcare.
So Donald Trump thinks he's not going to be the sucker who, as president, takes this on, at least not before the midterm. So it's a campaign promise. It's ironic because it's the only way to be fiscally responsible, and in terms of Social Security, it's the only way to save the program. But it will not happen before the midterms, in my view. Sean.
Yeah, I agree politically. Like, you wait till your second term, or your second after the midterms, hope that you have it. I think the sell is also critical, right? So can you find efficiencies, and I mean this in all seriousness, this is where Musk could really shine. Washington, I think I've said this before, if I ask you for $10 and you give me $8, in Washington that's called a $2 cut. This is insane. If we don't address the debt, that is the biggest national security threat to our country and our future existence. It is disgusting when people get up there of both parties and say, I refuse to touch Social Security. That is the most dishonest thing you can say to the American people. The program is going bankrupt. Medicare is going bankrupt. Medicare is going bankrupt. And by not touching it, you are supporting bankruptcy. So if I were Trump, the way I'd come out and say, I'd use Elon and I'd say, what kind of efficiencies can we do to what's the word I'm looking, not bankrupt, sustainability. But if he can come out and say, we've found a way without touching benefits. Solvency, thank you, Mark. It's Sunday night at 6. Then without touching it, which I think, again, you're just kicking the can down the road, by the way. But if he can say, hey, we can take it from 2042 to 2047, we're buying 5 years.
No changes for current retirees or anyone approaching retirement.
Yeah. Then there is some possibility. But I do think that, those are things, if we can make common sense reforms, those are things that we should all be on board with. So how he does it, the approach is going to matter. The second that it comes out, and Bush tried a little of this, with it's going to cut, we're screwed.
The other thing is it has to be bipartisan, and there's no way to get a bipartisan deal now.
I mean, that's the challenge. Everyone knows what has to be done. Everybody does. I mean, you want more defense spending, but maybe. But that is very, they're right. That is very hard to do. That's why there's, to some extent, Democrats laugh at Elon Musk. We're going to get whatever it was, $2 trillion out. And you're like, okay. The part that you're talking about cutting is 5% of the budget. You're not going to really, and that's if you eliminated all of it, which they're obviously not going to do. So it's very hard because just politically speaking, let's say Democrats or Nixon goes to China. Right? It would take a Democrat. We're losing the working class vote. How tempting would it be for Republicans to say they are screwing you by jerking around with your Social Security? We are the protectors of Social Security in the working class. Be very tempting. I would imagine for Republicans, it would be their nirvana. So until you got both parties, and I really think it's only when there's a crisis will both parties say it's time to address it.
Thank you for the question.
And that's what happened with Canada 30 years ago. I mean, they had a crisis. And,
when they're the 51st state, then we'll talk about it.
They had to make some major changes, but
thank you.
So,
appreciate
and by the way, hail the Redskins. Come on. Any Redskin fans here? Please. Okay, good.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. Doug Thornton is my name. I'm from Cleveland originally, so I'm maybe one of the only Cleveland Browns fans.
In Cleveland.
But I live in Alexandria. So I just have a question, and I really appreciate the platform. Was a listener for, I guess, since October of last year. And but I was always reluctant to come on because I used to work at USAID. And
Is that thing still around?
That's what my question is about. I don't think so. So up until last week, I did. I was a contractor. But the larger question I wanted to understand is, like, from your perspective, what's the kind of the foreign policy outlook in terms of like foreign aid, foreign assistance, and that portfolio? My understanding is that USAID has now been kind of absorbed by the State Department, but selfishly just trying to figure out kind of like my focus is private sector engagement, that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to figure out like where things are going in terms of foreign assistance portfolio, and who's going to be in charge. I know Rubio can have a full plate, so who's going to be the person that will run that. And then the next follow-up is, so there was a person who used to be chief of staff at USAID, Scott Steiger. I think he was on Pikes for USAID. So thank you. So we want to start.
I mean, it's going to be an obvious target for the current conflict. There's no appetite for foreign aid right now. I know it's minuscule in terms of the totality of our budget, but it's an easy target because people are kind of, I mean, the America First agenda is literally America First. Why are we sending money abroad when we've got failing infrastructure systems in so many aspects of our own government? I understand, don't get me wrong, I understand what it does to help in some places in terms of keeping, and especially with the rise of China. China's running in, buying up so much of other countries, their minerals, their ports. Like, there's an aspect that if we don't counter that, we're going to turn around one day and the rest of the world is going to be owned by China. So I get the strategic importance of it. I think it's going to be a very big challenge, at least for now, to make the case for foreign aid. And so there's going to be a balance between what's existing and any kind of increases. So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah. If I could just so the one thing, I guess there's a foreign aid component, and then my understanding, and that's why I mentioned that person that you might want to have on, is kind of like the more the investment-oriented approach, like the DFC is involved in making investments, and USAID to a certain extent was making investments also. So it, not just foreign assistance and grants, but actually like promoting business opportunities for United States entities. So.
Totally. I mean, the challenge is, and Sean kind of did the two sides of the coin, is if we step out of the playing field, China is coming in. Right. They are building airports. They're giving loans to redo ports, let alone take minerals and sign all these contracts. So one, like, there is a real issue. Politically, the challenge is, and for those who saw Kamala Harris on Charlemagne the God in the campaign, I'm being serious here, she took calls from people. And one of them was a woman from Detroit who said, why is our money going to Ukraine when we have so many problems here in the state of Michigan? What are you going to do to fix Michigan? On the John Kerry campaign, one of the biggest applause lines he got that fall was, it's time to rebuild firehouses in America and not new ones in Baghdad. It is very hard in this environment to make the argument that we need to be making investments all over the world, that we probably all would agree, if money grew on trees, is the right thing to do, and for our national security. When you tell people who are so angry, we have all these problems in our country and we can't afford them. It's just, nobody wants to step out right now and make that argument.
It appears from a distance that both Donald Trump and Elon Musk are taking delight in discombobulating the different agencies and departments, right? They're not going out of their way, to say the least, to do this in a manner that celebrates the workforce or reassures them or explains clearly. And I think, just from a human point of view, I'm not a big fan of that style. On the other hand, they do believe, and I think there's a justification for this, that they have a mandate to change the way things are done. Yeah. And USAID, I can't say that it's more efficient or less efficient or in the middle compared to most departments, but the sentiment that my colleagues expressed makes it an easy target to say business as usual, no more. Budget's going to be different. It's not going to reflect a liberal Democrat with a small d or large d both point of view in terms of the programs. And the assumption is every department, every employee at USAID now has to justify their existence. Why is this consistent with America First? Right. And I think that because the prevailing sentiment about foreign aid, which has been around for a while, it's going to be very difficult, and that's why they're trying to find efficiencies. But they're not the only department that will face this. I think it's easy for those who want to highlight the impact of the changes to point to USAID and other foreign assistance programs to say people will die, people will get sick, America's influence in the world will diminish. But that is not the something that Musk and Trump are putting a premium on right now.
Yeah, good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. Roy from Bethesda with my beautiful wife, Sue Ann. We offset each other's votes every other year, but we do just fine otherwise. First, minor question. Dan, you brought a pocket handkerchief for Sean, but why not for Mark?
I gave him one for the holidays that was a two-way morning meeting pocket square. He must have forgotten it. In New York.
This would have been perfect.
Never worn one, never will, don't understand them. I just don't understand them.
Questions
I'll
on
leave that.
mainstream media. I think some of us thought in November there might be some course correction with mainstream media. And candidly, we're all here because it's not working too well in one way or another. And, you still see the same rhetoric, kind of the inciting language and things that happen. And on the business side, you see declining readership, viewership, companies spinning off, some of these channels, celebrity anchors losing their jobs, et cetera. So the question is, if you were to predict over the next 3 to 5 years an arc, is this going to continue and fragment itself, or is there going to be a course correction in the space?
There's no course correction. I will just say this. I could be off a year or two, but I think, you might know, but like CNN's average viewer, and they're all in the same ballpark, right? Whether it's CNN, Fox, MSNBC, is like 67 years old. The reality is, when you look at people who are cutting the cord and the average age of a cable viewer, it's like, right? It's unsustainable as a business model. Because the problem is you lose your major revenue as a cable station comes from carriage, right? So they're willing to give you $2 or $4 per subscriber. So if you have fewer subscribers, that's why they're cutting these salaries, because you can't justify that anymore. Ad revenue goes down. They don't make as much on the digital side. CNN actually does very well on the digital side, but none of the others seem to do that. Same thing. I mean, think about it. For all the complaints, you have 2 billionaires propping up the Washington Post and the LA Times. So the model just is unsustainable. I think you're going to see more and more online. You're going to see more and more options. But, I think I mentioned this once before. I got asked probably 2 months ago at a Florida International University journalism speech that I gave down there. Someone's like, what do you think about the decline in journalism? I said, it's not declining. It's flourishing. Go look at Substack. I mean, every top journalist now, Bari Weiss is crushing it. Everybody's now going on and developing things, but it's capitalism. If you put out a good product that people think informs or entertains or whatever, you'll make money. The problem is, you're right. I watch these Sunday shows because I have an addiction. And I flip around to all of them, but it is like somehow they didn't realize there was an election. And I'll leave it at that, but I'll just say it is unbelievable that this is the case, and you're seeing people one by one just fold. Jim Acosta gone, Chuck Todd gone, Don Lemon gone. You can applause.
Yeah, look, Sean's right. On the economics, I'm following ESPN. There's a huge problem that the decline of cable subscribers is almost halved in the last 10 years. They're losing revenue, but the cost of sports rights is going up, right? It's unsustainable. So there will be change. I think it's one of the reasons two-way is awesome. You look at people like Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson. May not be my cup of tea. They own it. They're putting content out there, and the market is responding. One of the complaints is, where is this on the Democratic side, right? Well, people have got to step forward.
I have not complained once.
Yeah, exactly. I think in 4 years, in the Republican and Democratic primary, it will not be the New York Times, NBC News debates. There will be some YouTubers and some podcasters who will host debates. They're going to reach new audiences. It is their market. Like, Kamala Harris spent how long negotiating with and prepping for 60 Minutes? Who watches 60 Minutes? The people who do. I don't know.
Apparently, they're going to pay Trump like $20 million too.
Oh my, that.
By the way,
shakedown. It is If I were running for president, and I thought I was going to win 2 weeks out, I'd sue every news organization and just turn around and say, kids are going to college. Like, that
Kids
is
are gonna own the college.
unbelievable. It's just an outright shakedown.
But by the way, do you know
but fine.
one quick little thing that happened the other day that I thought was so brilliant? When Caroline Levitt invited, brilliantly by the way, all of these independent organizations to apply, they announced it was close to 10,000, right? Do you know what they did? They created the best press list ever. In seriousness, 10,000 influencers, people with their own shows, just gave all their information to the White House to communicate all their talking points to on a daily basis. It was brilliant.
Well, seven of the 10,000 were me, so 9,000.
But I think this is good. It's innovation. It's like, Mark, absolutely. Like it's good. This is good, right? What comes of it?
I'll say this has been these are hobbyists. I've been in the business for a while.
Totally. That's why I look so much younger.
Well, quality matters, and these legacy organizations were asleep for 15 to 20 years as a digital revolution came, and they just decided we're going to be so wedded to our current revenue systems that we're not going to innovate, we're not going to think creatively. Some of them are doing it belatedly now, but I think their demise for some of them is predictions of their demise are premature. I'm proud of what we're doing, and I think the things we're doing are the hallmarks of success. It's got to be based on personalities that people trust, quality, seriousness, sophistication, transparency. All the things that are part of success in politics now, I think are pretty much similar in media. And then you need to have investors, as we said, the market will decide. You need to have investors who believe in the model. But there's always going to be news. There's always going to be news. People are always going to want to know what's going on. And I think the future is exciting for people on Substack, for Two-Way, for others who understand their consumers and who don't limit themselves. Okay, if your niche is you only want liberals or you only want conservatives, you're limiting yourself. I say it all the time. Michael Jordan said he didn't endorse Democrats because Republicans buy sneakers too. I think that is a more rational business model to say we want every consumer, not just start with half and see what we can get. Thank you for the question.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
My name is Shannon. I'm from a very small town in Maryland called Prince Frederick. I have a specific question for Dan. Why didn't you run for chairman of the DNC party?
I love working with Sean and Mark, and I'm plenty happy, and I am happily married, and we have 4 children, and so not the right thing to do for me or my family.
One thing aside from the fact that I'd have a very different reaction if Dan got it. Be a little bit more worried. But I think we've talked about this before. Both the DNC and the RNC are like student councils, right? I mean, if you look at who they both promote outside of a presidential, when you have the White House, it's always an internal candidate. I mean, that's just inherently who knows everyone in the school, if you will. So it's running from the outside of an institution like that is very, very difficult.
Put you on the spot a little bit because I know your question was maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but not entirely, because we hear it all the time. Dan hears it all the time. People love Dan, not just because of his personality, but they like what his version of being a Democrat. So what about Dan makes you ask that question? What traits does he have?
And how are you related to him?
I'm pretty young and very new to politics, but I feel like he brings good insights from both, like the Democratic Party. I was raised Republican, and I'm just trying to figure out my views personally, so I feel like he brings good points of view that, I don't know, I just like his personality. I feel like he's very charismatic.
This is so uncomfortable hearing this. Somewhere our kids are
Next
just,
time you can
throwing
help
stuff.
manage his campaign. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. Next, please.
Hi guys, I'm Taylor from Alexandria. Congress is supposed to set the rules of government along with spending. It's in their job description. And you've got progressive institutes like Roosevelt Institute and classical liberal places like Cato Institute expressing worries about the debt. Wouldn't it make more sense for Congress to look at a Musk Doge report, if he even releases one, and vote on what departments and agencies to not only slash their budgets, but also get rid of?
You're a very traditional person. Dan.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've talked about this a little bit before. Every program has defenders. There is a reason that I'm going to say a naval ship is not built in one port. Part of it's built in Alabama, part of it's built in Mississippi, part in Florida, part in Colorado. There's no water there, but why? Because committee chairs get jobs in their districts. So when you go to eliminate something, you are hitting a service and jobs in somebody's district, and all politics is local. Why did the spending freeze the other day hit a nerve? It wasn't because Chuck Schumer went up there and said, like, this is awful. It was because 90% of the government is good people delivering good services every single day. And suddenly, when people are like, wait, what is being turned off? They called their congressperson. The guy who was on from New York, Mike Lawler, said, I had to step out of the retreat in Doral to field incoming, a Republican from a conservative area, or swing area, because people were screaming, what is happening? And that was one, EO that's an executive order. So when you go to cut something, it's all fun and games until it hits your district. Other people's spending is a waste. Our spending is good.
All right, let me just really quick.
A member of Congress says that, not like Democrat.
I want to read 2 actual messages that I got. Okay. The first one says, not kidding, stop looking so much at your phone. And the second
Sean
one,
a drink.
And the second one is breaking news from my friend Jennifer Jacobs, who was at Bloomberg and is now at CBS, who says that on USAID, Trump has asked J.D. Vance to oversee the next steps for reform at the Government Humanitarian Aid Agency. Trump is considering dramatic changes as advisors examine where there's overlap with other agencies and where it's spending. Goes back to what we've talked about before. Vance, incredibly influential. I think he will emerge as the most influential vice president since Dick Cheney and maybe surpass him. Finish up on that topic and then talk about Vance and aid.
So I'll just start with this. I hate commissions. I think there's such a weasel way out of getting things done. That being said, I've come to realize that that's the only way, having a BRAC-style commission, and we've dealt with this in the past, the Bowles Commission and others, where the only way is if everyone jumps off the bridge together. So everyone's got some skin in the game that something's gonna come down off of my budget, my priorities, but something's gonna come off of yours too. That is the only way that this is really gonna work. I do think that for the first time ever, this current effort might be the first most substantive way of doing it, but to really get it done, you need the buy-in of Congress. So if they can tie it in a pretty bow, get some buy-in from folks, because as long as there's a deal where Democrats get a little bit more spending on something and we'll cut here and here, it'll be fine. But it needs to happen. And that's the only way it will ever work, is that if everybody says we're all going together.
Do people know what the BRAC Commission was? Yes. Okay.
But also,
Dude, it's a two-way audience. They know it everything.
When they were after the Cold War, when we were...
They also know Simpson Bowles.
Yeah, like downshifting our military, they put an independent commission together to identify military bases around the country to close. And it was like equal blue and red districts. And when that thing came out, I'm from Connecticut. Groton, Connecticut was always on the chopping block. You're from Rhode Island, a lot of jobs out there.
It's a school in New London.
Bipartisan members would lock arms, and it was an all-out brawl to protect your base. But if you protected yours, someone else's had to go. But it was only because everyone felt pain.
Well, the first couple rounds were very different. By the time I got to the end, my favorite example of BRAC, because I think we've done 4 rounds. For those of us who are in the area here, the DMV, they took what was Henderson Hall and Fort Myers, and now it's Joint Base Henderson Hall Myers. There's nothing different except they made the name longer, and they called that consolidating 2 bases to 1. But they'll get tricky as time goes along.
Yes.
As far as Vance goes, I really do think that that's right. He has the potential right now to be the most consequential vice president in history. The difference between him and Cheney, though, is that because people see him as the future and are buying into him as well right now, I think that has the potential to make him even stronger. Yeah. Because with Cheney, you knew he wasn't going to hang around, so you just had to wait him out to some degree if you didn't want to deal with it. Whereas with some of these folks, they're going, we may get 8 years of Vance after 4 years of Trump, so we should buy in early.
Yeah. Part of what Jennifer is reporting seems to be that there are people who disagree. Musk is treating USAID like every other department, which is basically the default is to cut and to consolidate and to question. And it seems what she's saying is the people who disagree with that point of view, have asked Vance to be in charge, and the president's agreed, because while Vance doesn't completely trump Musk, he's the closest thing to someone who can. And I think it raises the question, little explored in the undercoverage of Musk, of the Vance-Musk relationship. They're very close. They have a lot of mutual allies, mutual interests. But if Jennifer's reporting is right, and she's right all the time, I think this may represent the first check that we know of on Musk run a Musk.
Yeah. Well, no, but there's a uniqueness, and you look at like the PEPFAR program that President Bush installed. Like, there is sometimes, if you looked at it purely from a bottom line standpoint on a lot of foreign aid and said, does this make sense? You could go, no, cut it. But there is a geopolitical and strategic decision that we have to make a lot of times, either as a cudgel to China or for some other reason.
Or because America's the indispensable nation, and like in the case of PEPFAR, the only country that could do it.
Right. But there are bigger, right, what that does. I mean, so my point is, having somebody with JD that's not looking at it pure, who has a business background, who's really smart, but also brings a broader global perspective to it that maybe Musk wouldn't, is crucial.
And unlike Musk, he's actually a duly elected constitutional officer. Yes, next.
There's that.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
So, my name is Vadim. I am from Arlington, Virginia. Mark, I've been following your career for a long time. Big fan of yours. Love Game Change. And Sean, I love debriefing. Hopefully, I'll get you to sign it for me one day.
Anytime.
I have two questions.
That's the briefing. Available on Amazon.
I have
or my holiday gift.
I have two questions, one for Sean and one for Dan, but everyone on the panel can comment, and I would love to hear everyone's responses. So for Sean, when the Democratic administration comes in, it seems to me that their cabinet nominees get confirmed much quicker than for Republicans. So for example, Biden's DNI, Avril Haines, was confirmed, I think, on the first or second day of the administration. So why are Republican nominees delayed? And then for Dan, I'm a big fan of RFK Jr. and Tulsi. And I think they're fantastic people. You may not agree with them, but I think they're serious. And my question to you is, as a Democrat, are you concerned that such people are purged from the party?
So on the nominees, a couple things. One, numbers matter. How much do you control the Senate by? And so that's going to make a big difference straight out. Number two, for the most part, most nominees fall within a range, right? So if this is the middle, they're right to the side. And that they have a particular resume that fits the job, for the most part. Avril Haines had been, I think, deputy DNI or something. So,
correct.
So it wasn't a tough sell, right? Somebody who's in there, hadn't really upset anybody, so it's easy. The one thing that I think the media gets wrong when they refer to Trump's cabinet nominees is loyal. Like, that's the only thing. They're missing the bigger picture. Their loyalty is easy. Sit in a chair and be loyal to somebody. There's a big difference. Every one of these people are disruptors that understand that they are there to get things done, which is to put America first and get the MAGA agenda through. These are not wallflowers, none of them. And so they're going to be, by definition, more controversial. They're going to be more outspoken. And therefore, it kind of rattles people a little bit more than a traditional pick. But that's just the nature of it. So you can only hem and haw for so long. He'll get, I think, everyone else through. It may be a little bit more challenging, but, so far you've gotten a pretty good clip through.
Dan.
Yeah, I want to just make a point on that, which is if you think the government agencies are appropriately focused and do a good job, as a lot of Democrats do, then you're like outraged, right? Why? These people are unqualified. But if you think they're inappropriately focused or they need to think of some additional things and they need to be disrupted, then to Sean's point, these people are like amen. But they've got some rough edges, and that's why the problem is not with Democrats, it's with Republicans that's holding them up. It's not us. I wish we could hold Pete Hegseth up, but we couldn't. So, but it's an important point, and it goes to what you said, which is RFK and Tulsi. I've said this before. We have to figure out how to win those voters back. I hear some of you said to me tonight, we need a moderate Democrat. Maybe, but that moderate Democrat better not run Bernie Sanders and RFK out of the party, because Trump's arms are wide open. Come to us. Winning candidates can, I mean, look at Trump. He appeals to the Bernie voter, some of them, the RFK voter, and Howard Lutnick and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. There is an inherent tension in there. There was an inherent tension for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I don't know the answer. It's hard. But we better find a way to not say, if you question orthodoxy or you're different, we are running you out of the party. It's killing us. When I worked for Hillary Clinton, number one thing she would always tell us in every meeting, politics is a game of addition, not subtraction. What are we doing to add? Not much.
Breaking news, the Panamanian president just announced that the country will not be renewing its deal with China for Belt and Road.
And you know what? If I were Democrats, I would put a statement out, applaud. That is in our national interest.
You know who I worry about?
We should say that and not say, like, we shouldn't be defending Panama.
You should strut around the stage like Mick Jagger and lead a chant of USA, USA. Just for the live stream.
I tongue in cheek on this, but I mean, seriously, if you're like Peru, right now you're like, okay, Colombia, Panama, who's next? What do we have that they want? Here's Lima, take it.
So wait, what is it? They're not going to renew
their deal with Belt and Road.
Yeah. Got it.
I don't know what Belt and Road is doing there, but I'm sure it's a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And no mas.
You know, Trudeau is sitting there going, oh, crap. The process for which we are going to negotiate with President Trump has just gotten a lot clearer. Oh, gosh.
Look, his success is America's success on that, and that's good.
Do your Macron. Do your Macron. So good. Thank you. Next.
My name is John. I'm from Alexandria. I'm a retired economist. And boy, have I got questions for you. Number one, what do you think about the idea of, instead of Social Security being put into bonds, why not equity? Because it grows faster. That's question number one. Question number two, how are we going to counter belts and roads? Because it's kind of like they're taking over in a very smart way. And then can you explain to me how Trump is going to win this I'm sorry, what's the word for when you're born in America?
Birthright?
Birthright, yeah. Because I tried to follow that, and I honestly had to win that one. So take whatever you want.
I had an answer for the first. What was the first one? I had an answer for that one.
Oh, Social Security.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I
because
know
Dan's party doesn't like to stop demagoguing the issue. Of course, that's what should be done with the program.
Look.
And Senator Cassidy was working on a very thoughtful plan that was going to do that, and President Bush tried to do it. The Democratic Party calls it, a risky scheme, rather than leveraging a compound interest.
But we know how the stock market's
Of course,
gone.
but the Democratic Party won't let it happen.
Even if you put it in a bond, which I know you said, it's a better deal.
Yeah,
a passbook savings account at the credit union is a better deal.
Even under the mattress might somehow
Right.
grow.
Of course, unless we default on our debt because we don't want to raise the debt ceiling, like that might not be. It is hard to say to people. I mean, look.
Make it optional.
A lot of people here just went through the financial crisis.
Okay.
So people get nervous.
Make it optional. Who could object to being
So
optional?
you know what the funny thing is, there was
I
a
agree.
similar
Yeah.
experiment that happened that was unreported, but in the military, most people went into a system where you got 20 years, you got to retire, right? I don't know what it was, 7, 8 years ago, they do now, it's called blended retirement. They gave people coming into the military the option of basically getting a 401k because most people were like, I'm not going to stay in for the 20, right? And no one said a word because they were like, this makes a heck of a lot of sense. And I think that we underestimate the American people if we did it in a way that protected current retirees, which is what Bush had proposed, but make it a lot simpler, which is right, and I get it, there's a much better way of doing it, but if we can keep it simple, that would be, I just don't think President Trump right now wants to take it on. Maybe if we maintain a Republican House in the final 2 years. I'm sorry, Dan, and then.
Yeah, look, the right thing would be to do stuff like this, would be to put everything on the table, but it's so darn politically easy.
Just show of hands real
to-
quick. Is there anybody that would just, you don't have to say why, I'm not going to call on you.
I can't see 90%
but
of
was there
the
anybody
people.
that if the president announced today, current retirees for the next 15 years wouldn't get touched, but then you'd have the option of investing it in a government-controlled account, would anyone say no to that? Just hands up. There you go.
I mean, look, though, we've all watched focus groups, and Trump watched them, or his team did. There is a reason he said, I would not touch it.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it is
the current
so
retirees
hard.
Call vote.
Yeah. We're going to get to your other two questions in a second, but more news or fun facts.
Okay.
Who was the first Latin American nation to join the Belt and Road Initiative in 2017? Panama. Switched diplomatic relations from Taipei to Beijing. And now, only 8 years later, America first. Second question was...
Belts and Road.
Belts and
Belt and
roads,
Road,
because
very
I'm
applicable.
concerned about that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's huge.
Because there, it's almost like, you know, the spider is everywhere.
It's a big challenge because they have so much money and they have so much capacity to do infrastructure. I think it's going to require leveraging money, and my guess is this administration will prefer it be private sector money rather than government money. But the private sector can do a lot, and Donald Trump has done in the transition and the first couple weeks more to, in a collegial way, leverage the private sector than Joe Biden did in 4 years. Really has. That's hyperbole, but he's done a lot. And
Look,
so I suspect it'll be private sector money can go in and try to replace the Chinese government investment.
It's a huge problem going back 20 years. I mean, Barack Obama wasn't wrong when he talked about the Asian pivot. Like, it never really happened, but it's a problem. Like, under both administrations, the first Trump administration, China is marching around the world, building military bases. You know, the military base they built in the South Pacific Ocean that they just built out of nowhere and claimed the land, funding all these Belt and Roads initiatives in Africa, in South America. It's kind of like when Germany and England and France in the turn of the 19th century were, you know, shadow boxing everywhere, and others were going around the world kind of putting markers down. It's very worrying. Nobody seems to want to make that pivot and really confront the Chinese around the world.
What was your third question? Birthright citizenship. Never predict judges, justices, or juries. I don't rule out that 5 justices will agree with them. Probably not, but I can't rule it out. It's not the craziest interpretation
But
in the
I
world.
can't understand the argument, because it seems like it's pretty straightforward.
That's not what was intended.
Wait, you can't, wait, just so we're clear, you can't understand why he thinks it's unconstitutional?
No, I understand his argument.
He doesn't think it's unconstitutional. He just doesn't think it's the right thing to do.
Right.
I mean, there's a difference. Yeah.
So, I mean, I read the 14th Amendment,
Right.
and I don't, and you know, am trying to watch how they're doing it, and I don't
So
understand the legal
The
part
issue
of it.
is that if you are not, and I took one constitutional law class and watched a lot of Law and Order, but I can't remember the 14th Amendment verse, you know, verse by verse. There's a line in there that says something like, subject to the jurisdiction. And the argument among conservative jurists is that if you're not in this country legally, then you're not subject to our jurisdiction. So there are several folks that believe that that's the same way that a diplomat, if you are, here with your father that's assigned to an embassy and are born here, you are not a U.S. citizen because you are not subject to our laws. So kid gets born here that's with the Panamanian embassy, they're not a U.S. citizen. So there is precedent for this, and that's what they're arguing. Number one. Number two is, I think what Trump shows more than anything on a lot of this stuff is, I'll go fight for it. I don't know that I'm going to win every battle, but you know what? I'm not going to sit back and just say no. I'll fight. I learned that day one with that guy. He doesn't the answer is, well, it's always been done that way, does not fly. He goes, so what?
Flies in the opposite direction.
Yeah, so what? Try it. Go try, figure it out. Let's see if it works. So, you know what? For all the people who are saying we've got a problem, he's out there fighting, and he's willing to take action, and that's more than anyone else has done.
And that is the challenge on so many issues, is that how many times did Joe Biden, White House, leak on immigration? We're thinking of executive orders, but the story would say the lawyers are arguing about what authority he has.
Okay.
What weenie answer? The lawyers tell me I can't do it. Trump comes in and says, I'll see you in court.
So this is going to be bully puppets.
it's action versus inaction, and people would rather have somebody who gets stuff done than getting to yes versus getting to no. And that's been the problem, at least on our party, on all these issues, is here are the reasons they can't happen.
Trump's motto is, first thing we do, let's ignore all the lawyers who disagree with us. Thank you for the questions.
Yeah.
All right, one more. Very tall questioners.
Hi all. My name is David Frizzell. I'm from Prairie Village, Kansas, so I might be one of the only Chiefs fans in attendance.
All right, thank you. We're done tonight.
But it's sort of, my question has something to do that this most recent game, all of the conspiracy theories around refs and whatnot. I was just wondering for you all, open floor question, do you all have a favorite conspiracy theory as of now?
Is this on sports or just in general?
In general.
Oh, because the Chiefs definitely cheat. That's not a theory. That's a fact.
Not like your Patriots.
Being from
What do you
Rhode
mean? That
Island,
ball
yeah,
was
Patriots.
deflated.
Naturally deflated. Dan, you're first.
Cold in New England.
Favorite conspiracy? Good
I
question.
mean,
Thank
look,
you.
it's not my favorite, but the most outrageous is still Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable that kind of helped launch Donald Trump's campaign. No, I mean, look, it is what it is.
Sean.
It's amazing.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's the one that popped in my head. I remember the first time had some extra time in Dallas, and I went to Dealey Plaza and did the tour, and there's no way it's one shooter.
As we're soon going to find out when the
No
Trump
way.
administration releases the Kennedy files.
My favorite is only 3 words long. Paul is dead. Thank you for the question. Thank you. We're very grateful to all of you for coming tonight. The platform is you. You know, people say all the time, you know, people will win Grammys tonight and they'll say it's all about the fans. And to some extent it is, but their relationship with their fans is one way. This platform is predicated on 2 way. We think it's going to revolutionize media. It's revolutionized our lives, and we couldn't be more delighted to share tonight with you. People ask us to come and do shows in their town. We will. We'll get there.
Or your childhood bedroom.
Yeah, but our primary focus is on building up the business as you see it currently, twice a day. But get ready, as I keep telling you, for more. And thank you again for coming, Sean.
Can we get, when we're done,
Yeah.
get your thing, let's turn around, we'll get a quick selfie of everybody with
Okay.
Dan's arms, not
Everybody
mine.
needs to smile.
Yeah.
That includes retired
Thank you all
economists.
for coming.
Dan, anything you want to say?
Just thank you. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks for watching the show. Thank you for your kind comments. We just are incredibly grateful. We wouldn't exist without you, and hope it's an exciting journey.
By the way, thank you to the team. Dan thanked the production team. Thank you guys for coming out, but also thanks to the team at Pearl Street Warehouse for putting this on together. Hopefully you've tipped your waitresses and waitresses. If you want, you can give me the money. I will give it to them.
Fantastically seamless event. Don't spoil it by tripping over other people as you depart at the end, because you're a little tightly packed here. But thank you again. We're going to take the picture. Everybody get ready.
No, I've got the camera. I don't have the arms.
I turned it off. Sorry. Oh, yeah, you're right. Sideways.
Don't look at my password. All right. You know how to do it? Oh, wait.